This video is Dunk and Egg Part 3. If you haven't seen Part 1 or 2, I'd watch those first and then come back to this video. Also, Part 3 is going to actually be broken into 2 parts. I talked too much about the Second Blackfire Rebellion and Dunk and Egg Part 3, so I had to break them up into 2 pieces, otherwise it would have been way too long. Normally, I don't like to break videos up into parts further, but I had to with this one. So anyways, Dunk and Egg Part 3. Ares the First is still king. Bloodraven is his hand, and the realm is recovering from the spring sickness that took many lives, including the last king and Ares the First's father, Darren II. The realm is also recovering from a terrible 2-year drought that has just ended. The story begins with Dunk, or Sir Duncan the Tall, and Egg, or Aegon, leaving the Stony Sept. They are heading north to help Lord Stark take care of the reaving Greyjoys. Upon leaving, they see the head of a Septon on a pike. The Septon had earlier been preaching out in the open in a market square about how the Black Dragon needed to come back and Bloodraven needed to go away. Dunk claims that the Septon's words were wind, and that if they beheaded every man who was a liar or a fool in the Seven Kingdoms, half the people would have their heads on pikes. But Egg remarks, some words aren't wind, some words are treason. This leads Dunk to remembering the riddle everyone knew about the hand at this point. How many eyes does Lord Bloodraven have? 1,000 eyes in one. On their way to the ferry to cross a lake to journey north, Egg starts complaining about eating better food and a pillow, to which Dunk ribs him for being princely, something Egg takes offense to. Despite the ribbing, Egg still wants to use the ring in his boot, a ring that marks him as Maekar's son and a prince, but Dunk refuses. He knows that despite shaving Egg's head, if they use the ring, word would spread and that could cause trouble. Westeros was, and continues to be a dangerous place, with many people still wishing that the Black Dragon had won. Before they can argue further, a Lord's train passes through, led by Gorman Peak of Starpike. If you watch our Maekar the First and Darren II videos, you remember the Peaks have been trouble for the realm lately with supporting the Black Fires. Sir Gorman Peak had lost 2 of his 3 family castles for supporting Daemon Blackfire in the First Blackfire Rebellion, and was still pretty sore about it. Those 3 castles had been in his family for centuries, and now 2 of them were gone. When he encounters Dunk and Egg, who had moved to the side of the road so the party could come through, he threatens to hang them and declares hedge knights are of no use. Peake is also accompanied by Sir Alan Coxshall and a very fine-dressed man who claims to be a hedge knight named Sir John the Fiddler. Despite Coxshall and Peake being rude to Dunk, Sir Fiddler seems to be intrigued by Dunk and super nice to him, and even invites him to the tourney celebrating Lord Ambrose Butterwell's wedding to a Frey daughter. Also reveals the winner of the tourney will claim a dragon egg. After the lords leave, Dunk recalls that Sir Arlen Pennytree, the man Dunk had squired for, son had died on a redgrass field, the final battle of the First Blackfire Rebellion. Sir Arlen's son, Sir Roger Pennytree, had been killed by a man with 3 castles on his shield, and Dunk realizes that that man was Gorman Peak. There's 2 feelings that go through Dunk at this point. One is that he just met the man that killed the man he served son, so there's anger. But if Peake hadn't killed Sir Arlen's son, Sir Arlen would have never taken Dunk as a squire. That would leave Dunk still in Fleabottom, a peasant. So he may be angry, but Peake was kind of an indirect reason why he ended up becoming a knight. Dunk decides that since they have to travel by Butterwell's castle, Whitewalls anyways, to get to the north, they might as well fill their bellies, and Dunk should compete in the tournament. Egg isn't that enthusiastic about his decision, since Dunk is more into the melee and not so great at the jousting. Getting to the ferry, it turns out they have to wait until all the lords cross. This means waiting until noon of the next day. After being turned away at the inn, due to all the lords being there, and the innkeeper doesn't want to run out of food feeding hedge knights when they could be feeding lords, Dunk and Egg end up heading to a clearing to a camp with some other hedge knights. There they meet Sir Maynard Plum, Sir Kyle the Cat, and a young man who claims to be Sir Glendon Ball, the bastard son of Quentin Fireball Ball. And if you know Sir Quentin Fireball Ball, he was actually one of the people that fought with the Black Dragon and was a great knight of Daemon's and ended up dying before the Redgrass Field, so he was kind of known as a hero. They don't have much food and drink, but they all share. Sir Kyle the Cat means to catch the eye of Joffrey of Caswell, Lord of Bitterbridge. Sir Kyle made the Lord of Bitterbridge his first wooden sword in hopes the memory could draw him back to his service. Sir Kyle also expresses sympathies for the Blackfire Pretenders and a dislike for Bloodraven, going so far as to claim Bloodraven put Aerys I on the throne because he was weak and easily controlled, and that Maekar is killing his brothers so that he can sit on the throne himself. Egg protests, but is quickly silenced by Dunk. Sir Maynard begins to talk about the rebellion and about the traitors, and Sir Quentin asks him to explain to him who the traitors were, and that his father fought for the people that were supposedly those traitors. Finally, Dunk ends up ending the awkward conversation by saying there was brave men on both sides. So there's still a lot of tension from the first Blackfire Rebellion that happened 16 years ago, from people that were little kids when the final battle was fought. The next day, they cross on the ferry, but Egg is still uncomfortable with the amount of lords he sees that fought on the rebels, the Black Dragon's side. Interestingly, during this time, Egg also reveals that the last dragon left a clutch of 5 eggs, and that there are more dragon eggs on Dragonstone, ones from before the Dance of the Dragons ever occurred. He also tells Dunk of his brother Darren's dream that dragons will return someday, and that even Aerys I read it in a prophecy, which we know that's true, and less than 100 years later, we do see dragons return with Daenerys. At the wedding, Dunk is seated with the other hedge knights below the salt, while the lords sit on the dais. Egg is required to eat out of the yard with the other squires, and this kind of makes Dunk uncomfortable because he knows Egg has quite a mouth on him, especially lately, and is worried about Egg revealing too much about himself. Sir Glendenball cannot convince the lords he's Fireball's son, and is required to sit with the hedge knights, something that gets him pretty mad. While eating and drinking, Sir Uther Underleaf visits and reveals that there will only be a joust, but the loser of the final tilt gets 30 golden dragons, and 10 each for the knights defeated in the round before that. Dunk realizes that that kind of money can keep him and Egg well fed for a while. So the feast continues, and eventually Lord Butterwell and his new Frey bride come in. Lord Butterwell is in his 50s, and the new Lady Butterwell is about 15. Lord Frey himself follows in with his heir, a 4-year-old with no chin and a dripping, snotty nose. This little boy is the Walder Frey we know from the books or show. Dunk is very annoyed by this child, who has a terrible laugh, and thinks about throwing him down a well. So, Walder Frey is just as annoying as a child as he was as a grumpy old man in his 90s. Then the toasts start happening. One to the king, one to their host Lord Butterwell, one to the Lady Butterwell, and then to the hand Bloodraven. Dunk notices quite a few people turn their cup over and pour out their wine or water or set their cups down instead of toasting Bloodraven. Despite that odd occurrence, Dunk continues to drink and overdoes it by quite a bit. At one point, John the Fiddler appears, still very interested in Dunk. However, Dunk, having drank too much, decides he has to go to the bathroom and gets lost. Finally finding his way back in a place to go to the bathroom, he overhears a conversation between Lord Gorman Peak and another man. They talk about how Bitter still isn't here, but a few victories will bring him across the water fast enough. They also speak about how the prince has insisted the egg will hatch, and that a living dragon will win them swords. The other is concerned if the boy is his father's son, but the first man tells him once they have Butterwell's gold and Frey's swords, the rest will follow. Dunk is confused who they're talking about and almost follows them, but instead heads back to the feast. Back at the feast, a group of dwarves are entertaining the guests. Then it is time for the bedding ceremony, where they have a very drunk Dunk carry Lady Butterwell to the chambers while she's being stripped naked. This, of course, produces the reaction you would probably think a teenage boy would have to holding a naked girl, but luckily no one is paying attention to him. Dunk places her in the bed and on his way out holds the dragon egg for a moment. After being yelled at for touching it, Dunk heads to the tower roof, where he encounters John the Fiddler again. And things once again get a bit strange. The Fiddler talks about Dunk showing him the wall, and doesn't seem to know that you can just follow the King's Road. He then admits he dreamed of Dunk as a white sword, a sworn brother of the King's Guard, greatest knight in all the 7 kingdoms. Well, Dunk admits that he's dreamed of being a white cloak. He knows that it'll never happen, and even if it did, that meant giving up having a wife or children. The Fiddler also reveals more of his dream, that he dreamed of a white castle, a dragon bursting from an egg, and Dunk himself, and that he had dreamt of his 2 brothers dying, and they did. So he's pretty convinced that his dreams always come true. Finally, the Fiddler excuses himself as Gorman Peak shows up. Before Dunk can leave, Gorman threatens Dunk to forget anything the Fiddler said. Drunk, Dunk heads back to his tent where Egg is waiting for him. Egg reveals his growing suspicions that there are traitors at the wedding and many of the lords here support the rebels. Dunk dismisses this concern, but notices Egg has a fat lip. Egg had gotten into a fight when a boy claimed Makar was a kinslayer. When Egg claimed that Makar loved his brothers very much, the boy replied, yes, loves them to death, which caused a fight to break out. Dunk scolds him and tells him that you can't be affording to get in any fights. Dunk prepares for competing in the tournament tomorrow. So next Wednesday we will finish up Dunk and Egg Part 3 with the tournament and the second Blackfire Rebellion. Make sure you come back this Sunday for Aegon the Fifth's history, and then next Wednesday for Part 3. Otherwise, make sure you like and subscribe.